Is this, okay, yep, we're on. All right, we are, for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I want to say welcome to the 2021 Meet the Candidates Night that is hosted by the Rush-Henrietta District Parent Advisory Council. We thank you all for coming. We're excited for the evening and for your participation tonight. This event will be live streamed, so for people to be aware of that. We also wanted to make note of, we have interpreters here tonight. Due to the live streaming and wanting to make sure that everyone in our viewing audience is able to clearly see and hear all the information being shared, they will not be wearing masks. We have screened them ahead of time, and they will be maintaining distance to ensure safety of everyone here tonight. So to kick off tonight, each candidate is going to be given 2 minutes to briefly introduce themselves. After introductions, the candidates will be asked a series of questions. The first set of questions will be broken up for new candidates and returning incumbents, and we'll make that clear for each of you. And then the last set of questions will be open to everyone. We will be doing kind of a round-robin style to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak first and that we're not going in the same order. I think that is everything then, so we are ready to go ahead and get started. So again, the first 2 questions are going to be for Nikki and Diane. So, oh, I'm sorry. We're going to allow you guys to do some introductions first. I got way ahead of myself. I apologize for that. So Rachel, why don't we go ahead and we'll start with you for introductions.
Sure, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you to DPAC. I'm Rachel Sherman. I'm a parent of 3 children in the RH district, and I've been very involved. I'm a lawyer and a financial executive who can bring needed skills to the board. So you can learn more about me and contact me through my website, which is electrachelsherman.com. I grew up in Henrietta, and I attended RH schools all the way from kindergarten through high school graduation. I went on to Cornell for college and Harvard Law School for my law degree, and I've been working now almost 2 decades in law, financial management, and philanthropy. I've been active with the schools since my children started in the district, volunteering through Winslow, Sherman, and Roth PTOs, as well as the Budget Advisory Council, which you might know is the committee that advises the superintendent on the budget. I also started a chapter of Start School Later, Rush-Henrietta, to bring research, resources, and attention to the matter of unhealthy school start times and the effects on students' learning, health, and well-being. I've been to many, if not most, of the board meetings over the last 2.5 years, and I'm advocating for approaches to solve systemic problems that are common sense, research-based, and that meaningfully take into account the views of many stakeholders in our community, especially voices that have not been heard. My children are in 4th, 6th, and 8th grades, at home all the time in the Remote Learning Academy. So for the other families who have struggles with the pandemic-related education, I hear you. And that would be the first order of business to find the safest way to bring back as many students as possible to school. I want to end with a short story that illustrates why I want to serve on the board. A defining moment for me was in 9th grade when my mom, who was my huge supporter, died of cancer. My world was turned upside down, but I had teachers, friends, and others that helped me stay focused on my academics. RH singers, spotlight theater, and cheerleading, and I had a sense of belonging at my school. I want to have all kids have that same kind of support and sense of belonging when they need it most, so supporting the district's equity and inclusion goals will be a focus if elected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott, we'll move on to you now.
Great, thank you. And thank you, DPAC, for holding this event this evening. I think it's a great opportunity for the community to get to meet each and every one of us as far as candidates for school board goes. My name is Scott Adair. I am a resident of Henrietta for the past approximately 30 years now. I've been involved with the school district through the Budget Advisory Council previously, and in a minute you'll understand why the Budget Advisory Council. My full-time profession is I'm the CFO for Regional Transit Service, or RTS, commonly known as the bus company here in Monroe County. We serve a 9-county region providing public transit to all types of people in need of that service. I've been with the Regional Transit Service for approximately 9 years now. Prior to that, I was with the County of Monroe for 8 years as their CFO. I'm a CPA. I've been in a CPA for 20 years. I've been working professionally in the accounting and finance arena for the past 30 years with almost an exclusive history in government finance. I started out my career as an auditor for municipalities across New York State and New Jersey, subsequently transitioning into these roles of controller for the county all the way up to CFO and then CFO for the bus company. Certainly do appreciate and understand government finances, and certainly have spent a lot of time understanding school district finances as I spent a number of years auditing school districts, including Rush-Henrietta. I grew up in Scottsville, so just across the river, but certainly have spent a number of years here in the area from the district's perspective, and most recently served on the Henrietta Town Board for 4 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jesse?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Jesse Redlow, and I'm humbly asking for your vote for the school board. Thank you to DPAC for hosting tonight. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to everyone in our in-person and virtual audience. So a little bit about me. I'm a lifelong Henrietta resident. I'm an alum of Rush-Henrietta. I graduated class of 2013. And I just had such a wonderful experience in the school district. I had our amazing teachers, which I think are second to none, did such a wonderful job for me. And since then, I was able to go on, pursue my degrees at MCC, RIT, and eventually culminate in my doctorate in educational administration. I currently am involved with schools and our youth through my role as vice chair of the Town of Henrietta Youth Board. Ultimately, what I feel that I'm bringing to the board is I'm a doctorally prepared educator. My doctorate is in educational administration, and I specialize in educational technology, which, given all of the needs for virtual learning that COVID has created, I think will be a valuable perspective in partnership with the rest of the board members. So really what I want to do is advocate for students, put students first, empower teachers, and make sure that we are doing data-informed decision-making. So that's a little bit about me. Unfortunately, I'm a very passionate, communicative person. I promise I'm smiling under the mask. We're still adjusting to lack of facial cues. But I thank all of you for being here tonight and look forward to answering some questions.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you so much. And yes, thank you to DPAC for putting this on. I know how much hard work goes into that. A little bit about myself. I'm a lifetime resident of Henrietta and a graduate of Rush-Henrietta 2001. I have 2 children in the district, hybrid, full-time now because they're back 4 days. One is in Valmer and one is at the senior high. I am currently the co-vice chair of DPAC and the co-president of Valmer PTO. Previously, I was involved with Bio PTO. Oh, sorry. There we go. And I'm also a Girl Scout leader. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm licensed in 5 different states. And so what I'm hoping to bring to the school board is mental health. With the pandemic and everything that has been going on, I think it's really important that we look at, address, and make sure that both the students and the staff are receiving adequate mental health. There's going to be ripple effects from the pandemic, adjustments in the new year of going back to school in September. And I think it's really important to make sure that's addressed. And that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Diane?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Diane McBride. A little bit about me. I'm a lifelong resident of Rush-Henrietta and an RH grad. All 3 of my children are graduates from this district. I've been a board member for 17 years and been on a boatload of different committees, DPAC, MPAC, Finance and Audit, Policy. In that time, having the opportunity to learn in depth about our district. Previously, I was an adjunct instructor at MCC for 10 years. I also taught pre-K at Pinnacle Lutheran for 16 years. And most recently, I was at Peters Family Life Center for 13 years. Unfortunately, due to COVID, I was retired. A lot of us were furloughed, so I retired for the brief time. And when COVID kind of dissipates more, I will be looking for some kind of employment that will be meaningful and help me be connected to the community still. As we emerge from COVID regulations, we will need to review and evaluate our systems and programs to make sure we remain compliant and at the same time meet the needs of our students and staff. As we evaluate, we can then have a better understanding of the needs of our students. I'm very, very passionate about supporting our school community and keeping the focus on student success and what we need to do to make students successful. At a time like this, I feel we need to have a calm demeanor in our meetings. And I think at a time like this, experience is very important to keep us focused on the areas that we need to, from a variety of things, from equity, mental health, special education. All of our district priorities need to be our focus. And that is really what I wanted to say for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole?
Good evening, I'm Nicole LaPlaca. Everyone calls me Nikki. Thank you so much, DPAC, for putting this on every year. It's so helpful for the community to get to know who's running for school board. I have been a resident of the Rush-Henrietta School District for 15 years, and my husband and I chose to come here because of the diversity. I grew up in a very small town that didn't have diversity, and I wanted to make sure that we could raise our children in a diverse community, accepting community, and have that full experience of what the world really looks like. I am currently on the board and finishing up my 3rd year. I started to become involved in the school district when my son was in kindergarten. He is now in 5th grade. I was pulled right into the PTO, and soon after that, I became the chair and loved every minute of being involved and being in the schools and helping out. I also sat on my first district committee was Space Committee, and if you ever want to get to know really about the district and how it works and why we did why we look at how many kids are in a classroom and why, that's the committee to join. I've also done DPAC, budget advisory, and my big thing is about encouraging parents to get involved and engaged in their children's education. My full-time job is I'm a part-time now, as an accountant, and I really think the district does a fabulous job making sure that we're looking at our reserves, using them appropriately, and moving forward with the budget process and really hearing out our community members. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then, oh, where am I? Kim, I'm sorry. If you can
Yes.
introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you to DPAC for allowing me to jump in at the very last minute. I appreciate that. My name is Kimberly DeLarge. I'm a 7-year resident of Rush-Henrietta. I have a 5th grader at Vollmer Elementary. I grew up in the city of Rochester. I'm a product of Rochester City School District. I graduated from East High School, so very different from everyone else here that's here tonight. The reason that I'm interested in serving on the board, my son asked me, why are you going to this board thingy, Mom? What's happening here? And my answer was that he deserves the best education he could possibly get, and he deserves to have the best experience having that education. Since we've lived in Henrietta, I've been involved with DPAC, MPAC, DEI committee, and PTOs at both File and Vollmer. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, now we will get into the questions. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. As I stated several minutes ago, the first couple questions that we have are going to be for our new incumbents, and then we will have questions for, our first questions are for our incumbents, and then we will have questions for our new candidates. Sorry, guys. So Diane and Nicole, this first question is going to be for each of you. Can you tell us, why are you choosing to run again, and what is your goal for this term? And Diane, if you wanted to go first.
Sure. I'm choosing to run again because I have a very deep passion for the success of our students. I want to make sure that the rich history of educational quality in this community continues. I feel that with my experience, it's very valuable, that experience and my knowledge as we come out of this pandemic. My goal is, as we come out of the pandemic, to focus on equity and inclusivity. I sit on that steering committee, and I'm very passionate about the work that we have to do in this community. Equity isn't just about who we hire, but it's what curriculum we teach, how we treat one another. So I want to make sure that everyone feels included in our district. And the other piece is I sit on the Monroe County School Board Association Legislative Committee, and I want to continue working with that group as we work with the State Education Department. I recently had the opportunity to meet with our regent, Wade Norwood, and one of the things they were asking us is what would we like to see in some changes as we come out of the pandemic? So why waste a good pandemic when we know that there's some things that could change within our educational system? So I want to continue that work also. So that's my reasons for running again.
Thank you. Nikki, the same question to you. Why are you choosing to run again and your goals for this term?
The reason I am running is because I am very devoted to our school district, and I want to ensure that all students get what they need and supports that they need from the RH community to reach their full potential. And I want to help with the budget process and continue the success that we've had as a district in making sure we have the funds set aside to do capital improvement projects going forward and other bigger, and even our maintenance as well. A goal that I have is making sure that we are coming out of this pandemic, like Diane said, to look at what we did well, but also look at what we didn't do well and fix those issues and possibly change the way education is for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm now going to pose a question to our new candidates. So what will you bring to the board that is currently missing? And Scott, we're going to start with you.
Great, thank you. I'm not really sure that there's something missing from the board at this point in time. I think the skill set that I bring is somewhat unique with my experience in government finance. So I do think I understand the budget and the budget process that goes on in government. And certainly if I've spent some time with the school district and learning their budget process, whether it be through the Budget Advisory Council or as a town board member and the interactions that we had together. But certainly recognize in my years of working in finance that it isn't just about the budget. It's about outcomes, and it's about rolling up your sleeves and getting to work on what really needs to be done. And in this community, we have faced a unique challenge this past year, and we need to really roll up our sleeves to make sure that we address all the challenges that are coming out of it into the future, because at the end of the day, it's about the students, and that's the reason why we're here, and that's one of the reasons why I want to be able to represent the community's input into the students' education and making sure that they're successful in whatever endeavor they choose after they graduate.
Thank you. Jesse, same question to you.
Okay. I agree with Mr. Adair. I don't think there's necessarily something missing from the board, but I believe what I bring to the board is the viewpoint of a practicing educator. So I am a professor at MCC RIT in St. John Fisher College. I've been practicing all before the pandemic as a professor and an administrator. I continue to practice as a professor throughout the pandemic and after the pandemic. So I've been in the classrooms. I understand what our teachers are facing in these rooms, what the challenges are from COVID. I've seen what works well, what doesn't work well, and I think those are lessons that need to be brought to the board. And I agree as well with Mr. Adair that we need to ensure that we're bringing stakeholder input to the board in a meaningful way. And that's what I believe that I will bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly, for you, what do you think that you will bring that is currently missing?
Thank you. Like everyone else, I don't think that there's actually anything missing from the board. I think that I could help to bring more with a focus on mental health. And I also am very interested and involved in the special education portion of our district, firsthand experience. And so as a therapist, I understand and fully am involved in communication and transparency. And I think that's very important as being part of the board, is to make sure that we're taking into account all of our stakeholders, getting opinions, facts, and making sure that we are doing just service to both the staff and the students. And really taking a look, as I said, on the mental health, making sure that all of our community is getting the services that they need long-term.
Thank you. Kim, for you?
Yes, so I guess I'll have to respectfully disagree with my colleagues. What I think is missing from the board is diversity. Speaking and looking up some statistics on the New York State ed.gov website, it stated that 14% of RH students are African American, 8% are Hispanic or Latinx, and 15% are Asian. And that is not reflected on the board at this time. So that is very important. Representation is important. So I would bring that to the board. What I didn't mention in my intro is that I work at MCC. I'm a director of dual enrollment there. So I have 20-plus years of experience in higher ed. Also, I have experience working in a union environment, and that would come in handy here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Rachel, if you can round it out for us, what will you bring to the board that is currently missing?
Yes, well, excuse me, I'm with Ms. DeLarge and echo her concern about wanting to see more diversity on the board. The other thing that is unfortunately missing is a culture of openness. I've gone to or watched most board meetings for 2.5 years, and in that time frame, the ability of the board to interact with the people who come before them, who are advocating, is very limited. They have a policy not to reply to the people who come and bring issues and concerns. And I've seen others, not just myself, come up here with very valid concerns, and nobody from the board responds. I myself have never gotten a personal response from anybody on the board, except for one person who's not on stage here tonight. Also, as a lawyer, I bring a certain kind of analytical thinking, a kind of detail-oriented thinking, and I will uphold the principles of good governance, so things happen in the opening. Thank you.
Thank you. We now are going to go back to our incumbent candidates. What were the biggest challenges you faced on the board during a pandemic, and what have you learned from it to carry into the next term? And Nikki, we'll start with you this time.
I think one of the biggest challenges for the board is actually not being able to be in the classrooms like we normally do. We normally have a visit twice a month to the buildings, and being able to see the students and see the staff and have that personal interaction with them, and being able to hear firsthand how things are going. I think that has been a really big deficit in this pandemic. That's how we know if things aren't going wrong, is being there and hearing it, and not having the access to the students and staff and parents like we do at our committee meetings that we sit on. And what was, the last part of the question?
Nope, that's okay. The question was, what were the biggest challenges faced being on the board during a pandemic, and what have you learned that you will carry to the next term?
What I've learned is we need to harness technology to move forward and really look at how things are done and figure out ways that we can, as a board, get into the classrooms even during a pandemic and know what to do and how to help our staff. I mean, if we can't talk to them, we can't hear what's going on and what their problems are and how we can help solve them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Diane, same question for you.
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges we had during this pandemic, that there were too many agencies directing with no clear communication to anyone in any school district in this state. There was a constant pivoting, a constant changing of the rules, and it made it really difficult for folks to plan. What I will say that I've learned from it is we were more prepared with our technology than we thought. We do have a lot more work to do. It affirmed to me that our teachers and our staff are the most amazing people that we could possibly have. True professionals, pivoting constantly, trying to make things work for the students so the students could continue to be successful. And the other thing that I really think about it is this is not a moment of if it would happen again, but when it is going to happen again, to have a different plan and working together to facilitate a plan for the future.
Thank you. And now a question for our new candidates. How do you envision being a board member during a pandemic will change your role, and what extra challenges do you anticipate our district will have over the next few years as a result? And Jesse, we're going to start with you with this one.
Sure, thank you. I think there will be significant challenges with the pandemic. I think there already are. I agree with some things that Ms. LaPlaca pointed out with her question on that, lack of access to student input. But I have to respectfully disagree. We already have ways to get into the classrooms. It's technology, harnessing the power of the technology. I've had the pleasure of meeting with the Student Council over Google Meet. I've had the pleasure of meeting with the National Honor Society over Zoom and hearing a lot of student input. And that was incredibly valuable. So I think we need to continue doing that as board members. Harnessing technology to move forward is absolutely important and something that I can do with my background in educational technology in the higher ed environment and as a doctoral level researcher. I also do think that mental health will be a big long-term effect of COVID, so we need to look at how we can increase our mental health resources to our students, but also to our staff, because we have to support our staff in order to support our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Holly?
Thank you. I think, especially with the pandemic, it's going to be very difficult on the board. It has been very difficult for the last year for the current board. I think one of the challenges is, like Nikki said, we can't get into the classrooms. And yes, I think technology is very helpful and allows us to do Zooms and FaceTimes, but there are things that get lost in translation over technology. I do therapy online, so I completely think it's wonderful and there's a lot that can happen, but I do think that there are some portions that we need to be able to go in and see. And so I'm hoping that in the new school year, there's a way that we can visit the schools, have face-to-face communication with our stakeholders, and really get to have some good, deep conversations that help with transparency. Our teachers have had to make 3-4 different lessons plans in the last 13 months. That's not how it's supposed to be. We need to set them up for that. When this does happen again, we have everything in place and we are utilizing our technology correctly, and just setting it up so that we do have, the remote learning academy, the hybrid, and the multiple abilities for our kids.
Thank you. And Kim, the same question to you. How do you envision being a board member during a pandemic will change your role, and what extra challenges do you anticipate over the next few years as a result?
Sure. So less face-to-face interaction with school students, staff, and administrators is inevitable as a result of the pandemic, but this will just force the board to be more creative and intentional about outreach and communication during that time frame. And some of the challenges that we will likely face as a result of the pandemic, federal and state reductions in funding will be challenging, replacing lost funding, making hard decisions regarding allocation of resources will definitely be something that's necessary. And also focusing on replacing lost learning after we come out of the pandemic will be critical in getting students back up to speed and strengthening academic supports.
Thank you. And Rachel, to you.
Yeah, so I would echo that the pandemic makes the board role more important in terms of understanding what the community is going through, what the community needs, what our families and students need. I've been going door to door, talking to families and taxpayers in the community. I've been meeting with student groups as well, and I've been getting a lot of input. I've been translating my website into Nepali and Arabic and Spanish, so stay tuned. My website will be translated, and I'm following up with families that speak those languages. Those are the top 3 languages in our district outside of English. We can't be complacent about the safety of our kids, and so I do want to acknowledge that the recent arrest of a Hilton principal for sexual abuse reinforces the importance to review our practices and culture, especially because not as many people are in and out of the schools. This gets back to the importance of the culture of openness. So when questioning is considered a challenge to authority or expertise, you cannot allow that culture to continue. You have to allow people to speak up about what they see. I would want to do a thorough review of those policies. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott?
Great, thank you. This is a great question, and it's a great question because, honestly, I'm not sure that the pandemic changed the role of the board. I think the board has a responsibility of governing the district. the administration and the teachers have a role in carrying out that plan that the board effectively sees from a visionary standpoint. I think the real challenge here is the social and emotional issues that our students are going to face for years to come based on what's happened during this past year. And I see that every day in my day job. I see it with the adults that I work with. I see it with the impact that that has on their children going to school or work or staying home and doing school remotely. I feel like we really need to, and this is odd coming from the finance guy from my perspective, we really need to make sure that we invest the right amount of resources towards social emotional issues to make sure that those kids are successful as they leave our school district.
Thank you very much. So our last set of questions are going to be open to all candidates, so we'll be going around the full table for these questions. So our first one is, balancing the budget will continue to be an issue this district will face in the coming years. How would you lead us through this time period, and what do you see as priorities? And I'm actually going to change our order a little bit, and Kim, I'm going to come over and start with you for this question.
Sure. So balancing the budget should be done with district priorities in mind first and foremost. Instruction of students should be paramount and should be first, including academic supports to address learning loss that has happened over the pandemic. Keeping class sizes small should also be a priority. Modernizing buildings and infrastructure with the future in mind and maintaining the flat tax levy should also be priorities.
Thank you. Nikki.
Sorry, Kim, next time you speak, can you speak into the mic because we can't hear you?
Oh, okay.
And people at home will have trouble hearing you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Repeat the question, please.
Yep, absolutely. So balancing the budget will continue to be an issue this district will face in the coming years. How would you lead us through this time period, and what do you see as priorities?
I think I would continue to lead us as the district has in the past, is making sure we are getting information from, or not information, I'm sorry, communication from our different stakeholders, like at the Budget Advisory Council, and hearing out what staff and teachers and community members want to see in their budget and what things that they really want to do going forward, especially with the reserves and that type of thing. A big challenge that we have going forward is our goal going forward, not challenge, going forward is making sure that we are prioritizing our district priorities, putting basically our money where our mouth is, and making sure equity inclusion, we put money towards that, mental wellness, instruction, and special education. Those are our district priorities, so we really need to make sure we're putting money towards those and focus on those.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes. Balancing the budget is really critical for all of our programming. The tax cap is not going to go away. What I will say this year, we received an unprecedented amount of foundation aid, and that was because of the work that we did in our legislative committee, working with our new representatives and going to bat for us. So I'd like to continue working with them to see if we can keep foundation aid. Because of that, the tax cap would not really be a problem for us. I want us to be able to implement all the recommendations from our Equity Inclusivity Steering Committee. And I'd like to see us be able to work into our programming, fostering trade schools and programs of that nature. Not all kids are going to be able to go to college, nor do they want to, so let's help them focus on the things that are meaningful to them. And I think we need to keep focusing on mental health and our special education programs.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you. With the budget, I think it will continue to be a challenge. We are planning for the unknown, especially with the pandemic. We have to kind of shift our budget, especially in the last year, to be ready for the PPEs and, all the safety measures in place. I think it's important to be strategic and thoughtful in balancing the budget and also taking into consideration and having discussion with all the stakeholders that are involved and making sure that we are always kind of going back to our 4 district priorities, along with making sure that our teachers are being appropriately compensated for their time, their energy, and their education, and all the hard work that they're putting in behind the scenes to make sure our kids have the best education.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yep, balancing the budget is definitely a paramount concern. I like what Ms. McBride was saying with working with, with the state to help get more state aid. That's something that I regularly do. I lobby on behalf of MCC regularly as a member of the Faculty Association, and I'm willing to leverage my connections in Albany to help with that on this board. I also think that what's critically important is that in terms of how I would lead is making data-informed decisions that put students first and empower teachers. I think we also need to put an increased focus on family services to ensure adequate resources for equitable access to education by collaborating with district leadership. That division does a lot of good work, and I think we need to further strengthen that division to help get through the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott?
Interesting thought here, because balancing the budget's been a challenge for this district and for every district in this state for years. We've talked about school funding from the state of New York for years. We are lucky that we've gotten the federal stimulus money that we've received this past year. We're lucky that we got the foundation aid increase. Are those sustainable? Nobody can answer that question today. And that's how the district has to go about figuring out the future and how they're going to balance the budget. I believe a good approach, a good solid approach to that is to go to a multi-year budgeting approach where I'm not just looking at 1 year, I'm looking at 3 to 5 years out to try and figure out how can we survive on the resources that we have. I think it's great to go to Albany and ask for more money. I don't necessarily know that there's going to be more money in Albany to be able to get for our kids at that standpoint. I think the priorities really come back to we need to figure out through communication with stakeholders how we need to set the district priorities. That's the primary responsibility of the district and of the governance section of the district being the Board of Education.
Thank you. And Rachel?
So I see it very differently. The challenge of budgeting is in the process of getting stakeholder voice and budgeting towards our priorities. Where you spend your money, that's where your heart is. And in the process, there is not enough communication. I was on the Budget Advisory Council, and I could see that stakeholder voices were not solicited. It really was a take-it-or-leave-it budget that the administration proposed, and the voices on the committee did not affect the budget at all. And there's about $11 million or more of federal aid that's coming to this district, as well as legislators who have sought to improve foundation aid. It went up to 60% this year, and they promise it to go up to 80% and 100%. So the challenge is in listening and being effective in the budget, and we've had 9 out of 10 of the last years in budget surplus territory. So it's not a challenge of budgeting, it's a challenge of being effective and listening. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question is, excluding the budget, what do you see as the biggest challenge for the district in the next 5 years, and how would you like to see it addressed? And Holly, we're going to come to you first for this one.
Thank you. Outside of the pandemic, I think one of our biggest challenges will be the growing size of our community. Everyone loves our district, which is awesome and amazing, but we're growing really fast, and we've already had to redistrict and redo some lines a couple years ago. And if you sit on the space committee, you know that we're approaching that within the next couple of years. The west side has very much grown, the east side not as much. And it's a lot of hard work that the space committee does to try and project out for children that haven't even been born yet. But I definitely think that is going to be a challenge because we really pride ourselves on small classrooms and being able to meet the needs of each of our children in the classrooms, and it'll take some balancing to make that work.
Thank you. Jesse, we're going to come to you next.
Thank you. I see one of our biggest challenges as rethinking our instruction, because I think what we've seen through the pandemic with the wonderful work of the RLA and a lot of our other technology-enabled instruction is that some things work very well virtually. Some of these virtual technologies are good for the students. I'm not saying they all are, but many of them have worked, and there are ways to integrate those into our in-person instruction. And I think that that can be done very strategically at a high level of planning with the appropriate stakeholder input from teachers, students, and parents of the district. And I think it's my role as a prospective board member to make sure that all of those opinions are brought to the table. I'll also capitalize on my experience of incorporating educational technology into instruction during pandemic times and pre-pandemic times. And I do see that being one of our biggest challenges over the 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
I want to go back to an earlier answer I gave because I think really the biggest challenge over the next 5 years is dealing with the social and emotional issues that the children are going to have or facing as they move through school, and what's been lost during this last year of remote learning. I think the only way for us as a board to be able to be good stewards of that process is to get community input and learn what's actually going on. Talk with the teachers in the classroom. Talk with our community members, our other stakeholders. Talk to our friends, talk to our neighbors to get their opinions on what needs to be done. Where do our resources need to go to make sure that we're doing everything we can to have these children adjusted back to what we refer to as normal from the past. I just think that the issues that they face today are going to live with them for a number of years, and we need to do all we can to help correct that.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yeah, so I think that the pandemic and dealing with the effects of that clearly are is the biggest challenge ahead. I would echo the academic gaps that need to be filled, as well as the social and emotional pieces that need a lot of attention. I would add more social workers for sure, if possible, and I would definitely think about creative options to addressing the academic gaps, like summer intensive sessions, tutoring, extended learning day. I would like to explore all of those things. And I think equity and inclusion are huge challenges ahead. We don't even have a final plan with metrics to advance our equity goals. It's been worked on now for 3 years. I value that work, and if it was a real priority, the committee working on that would have been paid. Everyone were volunteers except for the district administrators and the UR consultants. And some kids are graduating high school without even having the benefit of the equity and inclusion plan. So I would focus on that.
Thank you. And Kim?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So some of the challenges I think in the next 5 years that the district will face will be growth of the town and school-aged children. We need to look at balancing out the schools and possibly revisiting our reorg from a few years ago. Returning to normalcy after the pandemic. We have no idea how long that is going to take or what that's going to look like. Preparing for the expanding diversity of the district and making sure that the district is prepared for what that brings. Our district is very diverse, and it's only going to continue to become more diverse. Are we ready for that, and what does that look like? Diversifying the staff. As the diversity of our district grows, we need staff to reflect that in the schools, especially with instruction and social emotional supports for students and staff.
Thank you. Nikki?
I think our biggest challenge over the next 5 years will, like a lot of people have said, is the social emotional from the pandemic. Being a parent of young children, I can see it firsthand. I have a son who we have to be super careful because of my daughter, and he doesn't get to play with a lot of his friends because I don't know if their families are being truly safe. I don't even know if he'll know how to meet friends and stuff like that. I think we have to really focus as a district and figure out how to help these kids when they're coming back, and also their fears of returning to normal because they've had to be so isolated and wearing masks and don't touch anybody. How can we help them get through? Not just even students, it's staff and families of students and staff, because it's been such a different way of life. And we won't be back to what we knew as normal, but we need to help them create a new normal without all those barriers.
Thank you. And Diane?
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues up here. Mental wellness is going to be a big priority for us as students re-enter into a educational program within our buildings. I also think that, as Holly mentioned, our space on the one side of the district is a little unbalanced, so I'm concerned about that. I don't want to say the word redistricting, but moving the lines a little to ease that. I'm concerned about our class sizes as we have so much growth going on. But one of the things that really popped into my head very quickly was transportation. We do not have enough drivers in this district to make transportation run properly. It will not allow us to do some of the programming changes that we would like to have. So we need to address that as well, whether it's, changing the start and end times of school. We just don't have enough drivers to make the changes we would like to have happen. So there's a variety of things that are going to be issues for us.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question is, in your role as board member, how would you continue to support the identified district priorities? And Rachel, we're going to come to you to start this time.
Yeah, well, I would challenge status quo thinking and change the closed culture that exists at the top. What we did yesterday is not necessarily the path forward. We need more communication, creativity, and humility. And from what I can see, the district is not learning from its mistakes. It's not a learning organization, although we expect that mindset from students. On equity and inclusion, I would get an adopted plan in place, implement it, and report regularly to the community on the progress, and also what we aren't improving so that we can remove our blind spots. We do not share enough critical analysis with the public, and we need to. On mental wellness, I would add more school social workers, since I understand we do not have enough for our students' needs. On instruction, the board approved larger class sizes at intermediate schools. I'd get back to smaller class sizes and get creative with extending the learning day and school programs. I'd restore the director of music and visual arts, which the board cut a year ago and has not restored in the 21-22 budget. And on special education, I would listen to the families and students about their needs and improve the number of families that report satisfaction with their special education services.
Thank you. Scott?
Great, thank you. So I think reality of it here is had the opportunity to go through each of the district priorities for this past year and understanding the challenges that the district, not only the governance body, the board, as well as the administration faced, as well as the teachers faced in trying to execute on that plan. What I appreciated was the fact that there is a quote-unquote report card out there. They do provide you year-end results to kind of tell you what they're doing to walk through each of these things and where they've identified weaknesses and how they're going to develop those into successes into the future. This is a process. This isn't something that happens overnight. And my biggest challenge is going to be getting more in touch with a lot of these priorities from the standpoint of what do they really mean at the end of the day. And I'm going to need help. I'm going to need to spend some time myself learning about them, spend some time with teachers learning about them, spend some time with families learning about them as to what the impact truly is. I think the priorities for what we have right now are very, very well written. I think what we need to do is focus on, and I need to focus on learning more about them and executing on them in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Jesse?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the, process and execution phase. The priorities set around equity and inclusion, mental wellness, instruction, and special education, I think are definitely the right priorities. I think they're very well intended. What I think we need to do is working collaboratively in all the ways that Mr. Adair just mentioned is to further action plans for each of these priority areas. I'd like to see more concrete action plans with specific accountable performance metrics, which includes dates of completion, because the public has a right to hold us accountable for making sure that we're delivering on these priorities. And I do believe very strongly that needs to be done. We also do need to put our money where our mouth is in a certain extent and make sure that we are doing strategic resource allocation to each of these areas, because without the proper resources and financial backing, we can't achieve the priorities. So through these more strategic actions, that's how I would work to further the priorities.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you. I feel our 4 priorities are very important. However, I feel like we also need to go back to the basics. We've learned a lot with the pandemic, and all 4 priorities have been impacted by it. And so really relooking at it and looking at equality and inclusion, how was that through the pandemic? The mental wellness, we've talked a lot about the social and emotional needs that are going to need to be addressed. Instruction, technology, we've had to change. We have the Remote Learning Academy. Teachers are having to change their instructional plans. And then also special education. How are we addressing that? Is there enough communication with the parents? So keeping the 4 district priorities, they're very important, but going back to the basics and making sure that we are accounting for everything that we've learned in the last year, and also making sure that we're checking in and getting some data-driven answers with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane?
Sure. I think that our identified priorities are strong. We do review them throughout the year. The priorities there are action steps and people responsible for those. And so as a board, we need to continue to have our workshops where we get the information from those individuals about what the progress is. I do think that from the pandemic, there are things that did and did not work. And so we need to take those pieces of information, and when we have our year-end and implementing for next year's priorities, be able to incorporate that into the district priorities. I too have my concerns for special ed. I'm hoping that as we bring on a new special ed director, that there's some reorganization of that group and we become stronger in that area. So there's a lot of great priorities, but we just need to keep working together to make them become reality.
Thank you. Nikki?
I agree with everyone else at the table about our priorities are very well written and they truly represent what the district needs. I think we need, because of the pandemic, I think at the end of this year, we need to look at the year-end data and the reporting to see where we're at on each and what we can focus on to make it better in the years to come and continue our, like Diane said, continue our workshops that we receive multiple times throughout the year, especially next year, to make sure that we're meeting those new targets and making sure that we're moving forward and not back. We also need to make sure we're putting money towards our priorities so we can make sure we can support everything that we want to in each of these priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kim?
Sure. I'll start with DEI. I can say that in my role at MCC, I'm the Director of Dual Enrollment, so I work with every school district across Monroe County, and RH is by far leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else because they've made it a district priority. So I would say to continue that good work that's already being done. I'm part of the DEI Steering Committee, and I've been a part of it since day one. And I'm very passionate about it, but it's time for us to pivot to implementation, so I would like to see that as a priority. For mental wellness, the same. The district hired Diane Wynn, and she's doing great work, so just to continue to support her and give her what she needs to do that work. For instruction, any conversations about funding, allocation, budget, et cetera, should be focused on instruction and academic supports coming out of the pandemic especially, and the same for special ed.
Thank you. So our next question is, being on the Board of Education can be a large commitment. How do you now, or how do you plan to, balance the demands of this role with your own personal responsibilities? Let's see, Diane, we're going to come to you to start.
Sure. Well, after 17 years, I've learned that balance, and the balance is your family first, your work commitments, and then board work. Keeping those priorities in the forefront helps you balance, making sure that you are giving the appropriate time for the reading and studying that you need to do to be prepared for meetings and to ask those questions, but also having the time with your family so that you are relaxing and being out in the community and just having a personal life. So that is really how I do it. It is a big commitment. It does take a lot of time, but keeping those three things in my forefront is what helps me balance it.
Thank you. Nikki, we're going to come to you next.
For me personally, I've been very lucky to have Diane as a mentor through my first 3 years of being on the board, because she really taught me right from the beginning that you need to make your family a priority, because this is such a big commitment. And I am very lucky at home to have a great support group in my husband and my kids. They do sometimes miss me, but you know something? They've learned so much about the district at such a young age because I am on the school board. And my husband supports me wholeheartedly in doing whatever I need to do to further the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Sure. So personally, I feel like work-life balance is a myth. It doesn't exist. Sometimes, work is a priority. Sometimes, your civic duties are a priority. Your family should always be a priority, but different things are balanced at different times. I'm fortunate that I have a very supportive family. I have a husband and my son at home who I talked a lot about this in the last couple of days, and they wholeheartedly support me. So you just find a way to fit in all your duties that you have to do. But different things balance out at different times. So you just figure out a way to work it out. But I'm very committed to this work, and I'm passionate about the district and the education that my son is getting.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yes, so I agree with Ms. DeLarge on that point. You make time for what you value, and I will make time for this. I am going to be the best prepared board member on the topics that come in front of me, because that's what I do. I study up and I give everything 100%. I am privileged that my work, which pays my bills, is part-time, so I do have more time for volunteer service than maybe your average working parent, and I plan to bring my children to many board meetings and things that are appropriate for the public to be in, because I really am trying to teach them about the value and the importance of civic engagement and working hard for what you care about. My third grade daughter last year came to a board meeting and made a statement in support of her teacher, who didn't have a contract at the time, and I was just so proud of her, and I'm going to bring board service and integrate it into my family life as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
Thanks. I learned from a young age in watching my mother basically run for public office and understanding what it is to be involved in your community. And I feel like I've been involved in my community for a number of years now, whether it be the larger community of Monroe County, the city of Rochester, or the town of Henrietta. Most recently with my town service. I certainly understand the effort that a board member needs to put into these roles. I certainly think it's really important, especially from my perspective of being a single individual and not having any children in the district, have a lot of things to learn about regarding schooling, and certainly want to dive into that with both feet. Not afraid of work. As I mentioned earlier in my opening statement, it was like, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves to get involved in this district and make this district a better place for our entire community, whether that be the stakeholders, the children, whomever it is. I think that this is a great place. The town of Henrietta, the town of Rush are great places to grow and raise families, and I want to be involved in that as we move forward.
Thank you. Jesse?
Thank you. I agree with what a lot of my colleagues have said. Your level of priorities change. You're always going to have priorities. Some things will take higher weight one day than others. Time management is something I pride myself on. I work towards my doctorate full-time while teaching full-time and while caring for a sick parent. And that taught me a lot of lessons about time management. It taught me how to balance getting reading and preparation done with essential duties. I was able to come through that and still be here, so I believe that I can balance. Like my colleague, Ms. Sherman, the work that pays my bills is also part-time, which is a privilege, but that does give me more time to be involved in the community. Also, I had a mentor to look up to. My dad, God rest his soul, worked 2 to 3 jobs and was still engaged with the community and engaged civically. So I'm going to take my lessons from him and make him proud and balance everything on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And Holly?
Thank you. For myself, I have always worked several jobs. I have several volunteer positions within our district, both on DPAC and Valmer PTO and with Girl Scouts. So I'm used to having my time committed to volunteer work, and I miss it because we're not going in and doing a lot of things in the school anymore. I miss volunteering, and I feel like by the time I'm able to volunteer in the classroom again, my daughter's not going to want me to be there. We're never going to have balance. It's about good time organization and making priorities and having support at home, and I'm glad that I have that.
Thank you. So our last prepared question for the evening, I'm going to ask in a moment, and then we will take some time to respond to some questions from audience members. So the expectations as a Board of Education member is to represent the community that elected you. We all have personal opinions on issues. How will you be the unbiased voice for our community? And Jesse, we're going to start with you.
Okay, thank you. So that's a great question, and that's something that I've had to learn how to do through my other board service. So I serve on the youth board as the vice chair in the town of Henrietta. I also serve on our zoning board of appeals in the town of Henrietta. Both are considered apolitical boards. And obviously, I do have my personal beliefs and my personal opinions, as do my colleagues. And I can say that on one of my boards, I have one set of beliefs. The other 6 have a different set. And we still work very well together. We work bipartisanly. We work in the best interest of the community to get things done and keep our town an enjoyable place to live. And what I've learned from going through that with that public service, I'll bring to this board and work with everyone productively. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly, we're going to come to you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yep, absolutely. So the expectation as a Board of Education member is to represent the community that has elected you. We all have our own personal opinions on topics and issues. So how will you be the unbiased voice for the community?
I feel as that comes with my career. As a therapist, we have to be unbiased. We have to not put our own feelings and thoughts into our sessions. And as a big advocate for our district, I also know that there's going to be times that I may not disagree with what comes out of our meetings, but it's important that I still stand front with our team, with the board, and not bring my own thoughts into it, and just have the ability to listen as well. I think that's really important as we go through this journey.
Thank you. Diane?
Sure. Over my 17 years, there have been many times where people have come in with different opinions than my own. And my style is I always listen to what is being said, and I sit back and I think about it for a while. I don't typically respond in a quick manner because it's important to sit back and think through what someone has brought to you so that you can make a good decision, not based on my needs, but the needs of the whole community.
Thank you. Nikki?
My experience has over the last 3 years of already being a board member and being unbiased with and representing the whole community is to listen first. Without that, you're not hearing everybody, and if you're only listening to a select few, then you are going to have a biased view. So that's one of the first things actually Diane taught me, is to listen and don't speak too fast. So she has instilled that into me from the very beginning, to listen, think about it, and then respond. And I do that for the whole community.
Thank you. Kim?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yep, absolutely. So the expectation as a Board of Education member is to represent the community that has elected you. We all have personal opinions on issues. How will you be an unbiased voice for the community?
Well, I think it's very difficult to be unbiased. Everybody has biases, everybody has personal opinions, everybody has personal beliefs. But anybody who works a full-time job for an organization knows that you have to set that aside to do your job. In my full-time work, I'm there to represent and work for students, and I can't let my personal beliefs get in the way of that, because it's not about me, it's about the work that I'm doing in service to students. And that would be the same situation as a board member. I would have to set that aside. And if I felt so strongly against the direction that the district is going and the town is going, then I shouldn't be in this position to try to run for a board seat. So, it has to be aligned with what I believe in the first place, and if it's completely different, then that's a reason that I should not be wanting to be involved with the board.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yes, so my approach would be to closely study the issues, understand what the data says, what best practices are, what the community sentiment is. My communication with voters and residents does not end if I'm elected to the board. I plan to continue to listen, to have phone calls, to knock on doors, to visit community groups. I have a website and a sign-up for my newsletter in the back of the room here. I invite anyone to sign up for my communications. Contact me through my website, electrachelsherman.com. And understanding the community is incredibly important. At the same time, I acknowledge there are biases. You need to listen. The data shows that diverse groups actually lead to better results. Real leadership is building community trust and shaping community sentiment to do what's right for children. And I would be focused on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, I think it's been said around the table, but we all have bias that we have to deal with on a daily basis in our professional careers, what have you. As a board member, as a town board member, as a Board of Education member, you need to do what's best for the community, and what's best for the community is listening. And we have a number of stakeholder groups that we need to listen to because we are setting the district's priorities in the direction of the district. So effectively, I feel as though my professional background, while as odd as this may sound, is a finance person who everybody probably thinks just says no to people. We don't just say no to people. We listen to people, we try and weigh it out against the business that we're trying to run to make sure that we're making the right decisions, and I think that goes along with a board member. And the only other thing that I would say is there are going to be times that we disagree. That doesn't mean that either one of us is wrong, but we learn from one another. I think Rachel said it just a minute ago. That's the opportunity for the board to come together, is those learning opportunities when we do disagree on different issues so that we can make the best choice for the community as a whole, because this community does not agree on everything.
Thank you, Scott. Jesse?
I was the first one to answer this question.
Oh, sorry, I know, we were.
I can go again if you want.
Yeah, do you have a rebuttal that you would like to? Sorry, we were distracted over here. So we do have several questions from the audience. We likely will not be able to get through all of them this evening, but we are going to pose questions and we'll see how many we're able to get through with the remaining time that we have. So our first question is, I want to know what ideas you have for hiring more educators and administrators of color so that faculty population is more culturally representative of the students. And I know now I've lost track on here too. Rachel, we're going to come to you to start.
Sure, and I'm sorry, read it once more,
Yep.
please.
So I want to know what ideas you have for hiring more educators and administrators of color so that faculty population is more culturally representative of the true student population.
Yeah, well, that is an excellent question. Thank you to whoever posed it. And studies show that students who can learn from people who are more representative of their backgrounds can be more engaged and learn more effectively in the environment, so I think it's crucially important. I would mention there's a gentleman I spoke with and got great ideas from Mr. William Hall, who I know is involved in MPAC. He's got phenomenal ideas around this. I would want to explore every single good idea people have. One is mentoring, expanding the mentoring processes in the profession, even across school districts, because it may be that there are not, let's say we're able to hire a Bhutanese educator. we may not be able to find people with similar backgrounds in our own district to mentor that teacher. We need to be looking more broadly at the county with our mentorship so we can retain the talent that we can hire.
Thank you. Scott?
It was a great question, and thank you for it from whomever it did come from. But I think the reality of it is I need to understand what the process is today that the district goes through in its recruitment process, both for educators and administrators. Understanding that may help point in different directions based on some of the other avenues that I've explored regarding my involvement with Baden Street Settlement and my involvement with the city school district from those perspectives to be able to say, okay, here's another source of potential candidates for that. As we look around this community, we recognize the fact that it is diverse, and maybe there are people here that are teaching in other areas that could come back into the Rush-Henrietta School District. Those are the things that we need to be looking at. I don't have a really solid plan for being able to do it, but I need to understand exactly what the district's doing today.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yep, thank you. Wonderful question. I'll echo Mr. Adair. I would certainly want to know more about what the recruitment process is like right now before I could fully answer that question. But absent of that, what I will say is that I agree with mentoring processes, but we also have some wonderful community-based organizations in Rush-Henrietta and throughout Monroe County that work to mentor young professionals of color into different jobs. And I think partnering with some of those grassroots movements getting into the community would be a great way to recruit more people that are representative of our student body.
Thank you. Holly?
Again, that's a great question. I think that it'll be a multi-tiered approach. One is definitely learning more about how we go through this process currently, but collaboratively working with other school districts and other agencies, making it an attractive place to come and work, making sure that our teachers are being supported, and just having a different process of inviting applicants. And so really reaching out to a bunch of different agencies that can help provide that.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes, that is a great question. It's something that we have been working on. There is a plan with the HR department reaching out to colleges that of traditionally black students, trying to reach out to those. We've been trying to network with other individuals in the community that may know of teachers of different backgrounds. There was almost a 16% increase in diverse staff this year, not just teachers and administrators, but even folks working in transportation, cafeteria staff. Those are other areas of importance to have diversity because our children see those folks throughout the day. So we need a broad range of diversity within our school community. So we just need to keep pushing forward, working together to find great avenues to find folks.
Thank you. Nikki?
This is a great question. I know as a district, we have been working very hard on this. I know HR has been trying to recruit from colleges that have a big diverse student population. We're trying to increase our networks from teachers that are currently here that they may have gone to a different school that has not just people of color, but people from different backgrounds. And like Diane said, we need to make sure that we're diversifying the rest of our staff as well, not just our teaching staff. And one program that we did start recently is mentoring current students that want to become teachers and hoping that they will actually come back to our district to teach. I would love to have us increase that. I heard it was really popular. It happened right before COVID, so I don't know if it's been going along this year, but to increase those efforts to homegrown teachers and having them come back.
Thank you. And Kim?
Sure, so many things were already mentioned, but recruiting from HBCUs is one idea. Evaluating search committees and how searches are done. Many times the search process is not very diverse, and you have people sitting making decisions who are not diverse and who are not accustomed to interacting with someone who doesn't look like them. So looking at those processes, creating a pipeline that begins in high school, creating a scholarship, as was already mentioned here. And then you also have to look at the other end of that, which is retaining teachers of color who currently work in a district. What needs to be done on that end as well?
Thank you. Our next question is, do you support the opening of schools 5 days a week for in-person education, including our high schools? And will you fight against teacher unions, board members, Monroe County, or New York State if they continue to oppose this happening? Kim, we're going to start with you on this one.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yep. So do you support the opening of schools 5 days a week for in-person education, including our high schools? And will you fight against teacher unions, school board members, Monroe County, and New York State if they continue to oppose it?
So this is a challenging question. I have a fifth grader who goes to Valmer, and he's back in school 4 days a week starting this week on Monday. And at first, I was not crazy about the idea. I felt like, what's the rush? Let's just wait until COVID is over and we can move on. But that was my worry. He's fine. The children are resilient. He's bounced back. He's having a great time. He's enjoying seeing his other classmates and having that experience, which is what we want them to have, that full classroom experience. I think RH has done a great job getting the students back safely, and that's the priority. If we can continue to do that, then I am in favor of students going back full-time.
Thank you. Nikki?
This is a difficult question because I think it's very personal for every family and what their situation is. But after hearing from parents and students this week, students have been so excited. I saw some staff, I live near File, and I saw some staff leaving the other day when I was out for a walk. And to hear them talk about how excited these kids were just to see each other face to face, I truly do support 5 days a week if we could do it. And I know that we are trying to work with Monroe County and our state legislator, trying to get the high schools open. I know boards and superintendents have presented different solutions to the county DOH, and we're really trying so we can get those high school students back, even if it's just 4 days a week for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes, we have supported trying to get our students back 5 days a week. And again, I mentioned before, working with 5 different groups, trying to get someone to communicate what is needed. We're at a place where our elementary students can be back. I would love for our high school students to be back. I have great concerns for their mental wellness. It's been great for the kids to come back. I won't say, will I fight? No, but I'm going to keep advocating to get our kids back, and I fully anticipate by the fall that we will be back here all together 5 days a week. We may still be wearing masks, but I anticipate that we're going to be back here 5 days a week. That is my goal, that is my push, and that's what I keep advocating for, with whether it's our state representatives or local representatives or our federal ones, because they can help us as well.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you. That's a really great question, and as people have said, it's a hard question, but personally, I believe that our children should be back in school, and I know firsthand how hard our district is working on that. I have been part of the reopening task force since August to get our schools back open. There's a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes that people don't even realize. My daughter went back to school full-time this week, and she's so happy. It's amazing what being with more of her cohort and children her age is doing, and I can't wait till my 11th grader goes back to school, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that fight is the correct word. Advocating, I think, is a better word, because fighting implies that there's a lot of resistance, and I think that everybody as a whole pretty much wants the children back, but they want to make sure it's done safely and with a lot of thought put behind it.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, wonderful question. I am definitely in favor of 5-day school, because all the research shows that children thrive better when they are in school 5 days a week, academically and socially, emotionally as well. But it does need to be done safely. And we have seen schools reopen 5 days a week in other districts that are doing fine. However, I like some of my colleagues have said, fight is not the right word whatsoever. I would agree with advocate. I would say more communicate. I think there's a lot of confusion around the issues surrounding 5-day-a-week school reopening. There's a lot of heated comments in the media and on social media, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on factual information, that we're taking our information from reputable health authorities and making decisions from there. So groups who are resisting opening 5 days a week, it could just be a need to collaborate and a need to communicate. It's not a need to fight. It's a need to be transparent and to make sure that we're making the best decisions for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
I agree with almost everything Jesse said, with the exception of it was a wonderful question. I think it's a really tough question. 5 days a week, absolutely. No question in my mind that that's what needs to happen. I agree with everybody in the concept of this isn't a fight. This is trying to figure out the right balance of things and how do we get in rooms and understand everybody's position to try and figure out the best, most effective way to do that. There's challenges in front of us. Listen, I work in public transportation. We never shut down. We had a lot of union pushback regarding how we were doing things. We adapted, we moved things. We went to rear board entry on all of our buses at one point in time for a period of time to make sure that all of our drivers were safe. We need to do what's effective for the entire community. That's the challenging part for the Board of Education. They need to listen to every stakeholder group out there, including what I'll refer to, because a lot of people refer to me as as the government bureaucrats. None of us want to get this wrong. We want to make sure that everybody returns safely. But there's so much information out there that needs to be digested that it's almost impossible to say that there isn't going to be winners and losers in this equation, and I think it's going to be a real challenge in the near term. But I think by September, as Diane pointed out earlier, we'll be there.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yes, I too want to thank you for the question. I think we need to retain a limited remote option for students in special situations, and for as long as there's no vaccination for students under age 16. But other than that, I do support all children being back 5 days. Some of you may not know that the district did not return Remote Learning Academy students. My family, 3 children, we had no option, even though the science is that spread among children is way reduced in the schools than it is in the community. The added piece, I would say, is that we need to retain scientific and health advisors to advise us, because the news is changing fast, and to tell us about the most recent up-to-date research. We have a $140 million budget. We certainly could spend some on getting very good health and medical advice to guide us along the way to bring back students safely as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Our next question is, our school board has been a cohesive group and positively regarded by other districts for many years. How do you plan to add to this cohesiveness, especially if your running platform was placing the current board members in a negative light? Scott, we're going to start with you.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat the second part of that question. I'm sorry.
Yep, that's okay. So it is, how do you plan to add to the cohesiveness, especially if your running platform was placing the current board members in a negative light?
Sure. Thank you for that question. It's a good one. I think the reality of it is every board recognizes the fact that we have differing opinions. We come from different backgrounds. We're going to have differing opinions. We need to be able to work together regardless of our position or what our beliefs are, because that's important for the best outcome at the end of the day. So we need to listen to one another, we need to collaborate together, we need to listen to the outside stakeholder groups and bring those opinions to our table to be able to digest and come up with what the right answer is at the end of the day. This is not done by a single person, it's not done by a single board, it's done by everybody working together, because we would be the 7 elected members representing the entire community of the Rush-Henrietta Central School District, which is a really, really big job.
Thank you. Jesse?
Oh, Scott's a tough act to follow on that question. I'll echo what he said and then add a little bit as well. My running platform is to add to the board, not to detract from what's already there. There's talent on the board. There's a lot of things that they do well that can be added to. And then we can do even more things well. And that's the power of collaboration. And that's what I see the role of any board member is to collaborate. It goes back to your question about maintaining a limited bias. You need to be able to work with everybody, even if you might not always agree with what they're saying. And that's what I've learned through my current public service, and that's what I will continue to bring to this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you. I think cohesiveness takes time, and part of this process will be getting to know each other, going back to the basics, looking at what's worked, what hasn't worked, and starting some things, and really looking to make sure that there's a lot of communication, having the hard discussions. There's going to be times that not everybody is going to be aligned with what is happening, and we can't avoid it. So by having the discussion and being respectful to each other, that is going to be really monumental in having a cohesive school board.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes. Being a cohesive group starts with the onboarding process that we have. We have a training process here within the board. We also have training that's available through the Monroe County School Board Association. Board members do have a 6-hour training in financial background and governance training that is required by the state that they must complete. But one of the things this board has always done is agree to disagree. That has been our mantra, that we are not always going to agree. We're not always going to see eye to eye, but we're going to make our decisions. And when it's over the choice, the vote, we move on, we work together collaboratively, working towards whatever the goal is that we are voting on or working towards. And keeping the communication open between one another is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki?
I've been very blessed to be on a board for my first 3 years that worked very well together. And like Diane said, it was the onboarding process for me that I worked closely with a current board member to learn how things worked, how things were done. If I questioned something, if I had a question, why was it done this way, everyone chimed in. It wasn't just that person, why, it was everyone chimed in. We're respectful to each other, we listen to each other, and like Diane said, we agree to disagree, but when it comes time, we make a consensus vote. I may not agree with something totally, but you know something, I get why everyone else is on board, and I truly listen, and everyone gives us that same respect.
Thank you. Kim?
Sure. So in my experience, it's hard to get things done unless you have a relationship. So relationship building amongst board members will be key, I think, in moving forward. Collaboration will be very important. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's not about any one person. The stakes are very high with our children and getting them the best education that they deserve, as I said before. And if we keep that goal ahead of us, then we'll all be rowing in the same direction, so to speak. So I'm very much a collaborator, and that's how I see this. And again, it's not about me. It's about all the children in the district and making sure that the district moves forward.
Thank you. And Rachel?
Yeah, I agree. It's about the ideas. It's about what's best for the children and the community. Whenever I enter a new workplace, volunteer group, environment, I always focus on the relationships, on getting to know the other people as human beings, what interests them, what makes them tick, and try to understand as best as I can the other person's experiences and why they see the world the way that they do. And I would hope others would approach me in that same way. At the same time, the responsibility of this board, of the board, is to the community. There's a fiduciary obligation there. And while cohesiveness is nice if it can be attained, what's more important is robust discussion in public. And I don't see a lot of agree to disagree in public. And I would like to see the different opinions and views of the different board members, and I will always be respectful of other people's different views. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. we are going to have to conclude our question and answer for now, because we do want to give each of the candidates 2 minutes to give us your final thoughts and kind of conclude for the evening. And we will go to Nikki to start first.
Thank you. I'm a devoted mom who wants to ensure every child gets what they need and the support that they need from RH School District to reach their full potential as a global citizen. I use my expertise with accounting to help the budget process and pardon me, I'm sorry. In keeping the district moving forward. I've been blessed to be on the board for 3 years and worked with a great group of people. And it's been I would love the opportunity to continue serving. Going forward, I would like us to make sure we look at what we did right and wrong in the pandemic and use that to increase our educational experiences for our kids. And Rachel said before, leaving that remote option there for families who truly need it going forward until we have a vaccine for all children. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes. I've been humbled and honored to serve this community for 17 years. Rush-Henrietta has a great history of excellence. That excellence is supported by our great professional staff, our teachers and our administrators. Without them, we would not be as successful as we are. I want our students to remain successful, but I also want to make sure that our staff, our teachers, have the resources in order to help our children be successful. In moving forward, some things did work and some things did not work during COVID, and we need to examine those pieces and see what we can do to strengthen them. Some of the conversation we've had is what can we do to keep some remote learning going on for some of our students. We recognize not all students learn in the same way, and some students are learning better in the remote learning academy, and so what options do we have? Can we collaborate with other districts to provide some kind of remote learning opportunities for our students? I want to see this district continue moving forward, keeping that excellence moving forward, and working together with our staff and our community to make this happen for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you. I love our school district. I can't say enough good things about it. There are obviously always things that we can improve upon, but it's also important to recognize all the hard work that's already being done. We have great teachers, great staff, and it's important that we recognize them. If you had told me 10 years ago that I would be doing this, I would have laughed at you. But once my daughter started school and I saw all the hard work that goes into this with the special education, with all of our instructions, it's important that we continue to advocate for all of our stakeholders, our teachers, give everyone the resources that they need. And I think that my passion for the district will really help with that.
Thank you. Jesse?
Thank you. As Ms. McBride pointed out, Rush-Henrietta has a long history of excellence, and that is something that I'd like to help to continue. Being the best in Monroe County is something that we should continue to strive to be, but in order to do that, we can't become complacent. We have to keep pushing forward and innovating, especially as times continue to change. So what I'm really running to do is to ensure that data-informed decisions are made, that with diverse stakeholder input, that are putting students first and empowering our teachers. Those two things must go hand in hand. Empowering teachers is putting students first empowers teachers. So those we need to do. By bringing a fresh perspective, myself, as a more recent alumni of the Rush-Henrietta School District, who had a great foundation there, and as someone who is a continuing practitioner, as a professor who studies educational technology and equity, I'm confident that we as a community can meet our goals together. And those goals are our district priorities, but that's going to require all of us. That's greater than myself. It's greater than any one board member. And I hope to work with all of you to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
Well, again, just to close, I'd like to thank DPAC for putting this together and the effort that I know that you go through in order to get an event like this off the ground. I'd like to thank the people that are here as well as the people that are watching this online. This is an important process, and as everybody has said before me, we are fortunate to be living in the district that we're living in. This district is an excellent school district by all means and is continuing to push forward. I want to be a part of that pushing forward. I had the unique opportunity to serve the town of Henrietta in that capacity to move things forward. And it is a very bright future for this whole entire area from that perspective. We have a lot going on here, a lot of pluses from a community perspective that I want to be a part of as I move forward. I do believe that my background from a financial sense will assist the board in some of the transactions or some of the things that they have to deal with coming up. I also think that there's a lot of learning that I need to do on the educational side of things in order to make myself as effective of a board member as I can be. And I think with the group that's going to be elected as any one of the 4 people that are successful in this process sitting here tonight, if I'm one of them, I know that I'll be able to learn from the others on the board as well as the folks that are sitting here tonight to be able to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I know it's a lot to give up 90 minutes of personal and family time on a weeknight, and I want to thank my friends and supporters who are here in the audience and my husband and kids who are watching at home. I loved my experience as an RH student. I was able to excel academically and explore many extracurricular interests, and I was supported when I needed it most after the death of my mom when I was in high school. I feel like it's my turn to give back to a district that I've loved. So I hope you can tell from what I've shared tonight that I have some skills that are needed on the board. I have analytical and common sense reasoning, advocacy for the things that are right for kids in the community, organizational skills that I've honed as a lawyer and executive to support financial accountability, and a focus on changing the closed culture of the board in 2 ways: increasing transparency. People should have up-to-date information and complete transparency about the decisions that are being made, why they're being made, and your opportunity to influence those decisions. Transparency has been in decline from the reconfiguration to the return of full-time school planning, and I'd like to turn that around. Also, changing the culture of one-way communication. It has to be 2-way reflective listening, and you have to close the loop with those who've shared information, including our educators, families, and students. Where and how you make decisions to spend your money reflects your priorities, and good communication needs to be present in the budget development process. And I have a passion to expand that sense of belonging and achieve equity in our schools. So I thank you for your time tonight, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kim?
Sure. So when I moved to Henrietta from the city, as I said, I've only lived in Henrietta for the past 7 years. I did so reluctantly. I was a city dweller. I didn't see myself as a suburbanite at all. But once I had a child, and he turned 4, my husband and I had a decision to make. Do we, pay for private school, or do we move out of the city? And that decision was made solely around education and what kind of education we wanted my son to have. So we did our research, and we chose Rush-Henrietta because of the school system, because of the diversity, and frankly, because of the low taxes. So those are all important things to me personally, and things that I could work on and influence as part of the board. In addition to that, diversity and representation is very important. Our school district is almost 40% students of color, so those students need to be represented and see someone on the board who looks like them. So that's important. My focus as a board member would be diversity, equity, and inclusion, inclusive curriculum, academic supports, and social emotional supports. And I would count it a privilege to serve on the board and to serve the community in this way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that will conclude our evening for tonight. I want to thank all of our candidates again for coming out tonight, taking the time to answer questions and sharing with us so that we have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about each of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Nikki?